Namaste and good evening. I, Chavi Jain, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, Prabhav Evam Niti Anusandhan Sansthan, Nai Delhi, extend my warmest welcome to you all to IMPRI #Web Policy Talk. Today, we have gathered here for a special talk on access to finance for women. This discussion is a part of the series #Gender Gaps, organized by IMPRI Gender Impact Studies Center. The chair for today's session is Professor Vibhuti Patel, visiting professor at IMPRI and former professor, Tata Institute of Social Sciences. Discussants and speaker for today, Mr. S Bhat.
Please, Chavi, please introduce Mr. S Bhat and the discussants.
Mr. S Bhat is the Chief Executive Officer at Friends of Women's World Banking India, based out of Ahmedabad, working in the arena of empowering women from low-income households through capacity building and enhancing access to financial services to make them self-reliant and participate in the mainstream economy. Sir is also a veteran banker with over 36 years of experience holding leadership positions, driving the growth of the bank in inclusive development. A very warm welcome to you, sir.
Thank you.
Our discussants for today are Ms. Shweta Aprameya, founder and CEO at ARTH and co-founder Happy, and Ms. Swati Chowdhary, Director, Network Development and Advocacy, India, Women's World Banking. Thank you for joining us, ma'am.
Thank you.
Now,
Thank you.
I invite our chair, Professor Vibhuti Patel, to proceed with the deliberation. We look forward to learning from our esteemed gathering. Thank you, ma'am, and over to you.
Dear friends, first of all, I would like to express my heartfelt thanks to Dr. Arjun Kumar and Dr. Chavi Jain for doing all the spade work for today's discussion, which is extremely important, access to finance for women. I greet Mr. S Bhat, Ms. Shweta Aprameya, and Ms. Swati Chowdhary from the financial sector. We all know that bridging the gender gap in access to finance has been a major concern, even in the context of pandemic, and 64 countries, women leaders have come together to institute a special fund. There is a talk about creation of women's bond, so that whatever damage that pandemic has done in terms of women's employment opportunities, their livelihood, and also the reproductive rights of women, the question of nutrition, all this can be addressed, and the development intervention can be effective with funds, functions, and functionaries. Women make up to 40% of world's workforce. Many of the sectors that are critical to economic growth in some of the poorest countries, including India, they rely heavily on women. Small and medium-sized enterprises with women ownership represent 30% to 37% in SME sector. 8 million to 10 million women are self-employed in emerging markets. These businesses have unmet financial needs of between US 260 billion to US 320 billion a year. And this is the biggest barrier to growth and development. So access to credit can open up economic opportunities for women, and bank accounts can be gateway to the use of additional financial services. However, women entrepreneurs and employers face significantly greater challenge than men in gaining access to financial services, even when the big fish, big enterprises which dupe the nationalized bank and private and cooperative banks, they are considered trustworthy, but women face the whole feeling from the banking authorities that they are not even seen as creditworthy. Only 8% of women entrepreneurs in our country, they are registered as in the total workforce. We see them. And there also their capacity to invest is between 50,000 to lakhs, and most of them have to depend on their friends or family members, or they sometimes sell off their gold to invest in their enterprises. The Global Findex, which comprehensive database measuring how people save, borrow, and manage risk in 148 countries, reveals that women are less likely than men to have formal bank accounts. And in developing economies, women are 20% less likely than men to have an account at a formal financial institutions, and 17% less likely to have borrowed formally in the past year. So even if they can gain access to loan, women often lack access to other financial services such as savings, digital payment methods, and insurance. Restrictions on opening a bank account, such as requirement for male family members' permission, restriction on the women's access to accounts, and lack of financial education can also limit women from gaining access to or benefiting from financial services. In addition, many women may have access to financial services for namesake. The several studies have shown that even when the accounts are opened in the name of women, decision-making authority around the use of those funds is often lies with the male relatives. And World Bank's Gender at Work report of 2014 asserts, and I quote, on virtually every global measure, women are more economically excluded than men, quote completed. Financial inclusion, which promotes access and use of high quality financial services, particularly among poor people, is crucial to achieving inclusive growth. Women disproportionately face financial access barriers that prevent them from participating in economy and also for improving their lives. World Bank group is working to promote financial inclusion for women to help achieve gender equity and poverty reduction. More than 1 billion women still do not use or have access to financial system, according to World Bank's group's latest Global Findex report. So IFC has estimated also, given the estimate, the kind of marginalization that women are facing in the financial sector. Furthermore, developing economies have 200 million more male than female cell phone owners. Without access to mobile technology, millions of women are further excluded from secure and convenient digital payment. Without access to finance, women face difficulties in collecting and saving income, growing their businesses, and pulling their families out of poverty. As a result, women remain largely excluded from the formal economy. In this kind of a deplorable situation, we have rays of hope in several collective endeavor made in our country, like Self-Employed Women's Association. They started Seva Bank way back in the 70s. We had a Mandesh Mahila Sahkari Bank that they also have empowered women to establish and also develop their business. NABARD is a government monitored bank which provides support to small savers, and there is a special focus on women empowerment. Women's leadership in microfinance has been lauded for their ethical standards, judicious repayment of loans, and efforts at collective empowerment. So it is very important that banks groups like the twin goals of eradication of extreme poverty and increasing shared prosperity cannot be achieved without full and equal participation of women and men. And investing in women's economic participation not only has a profound development impact, it makes good business sense for companies and economies, as it is reiterated again and again by the Women's Economic Forum. Strengthening women's private sector participation is at the core of IFC's operation. Through initiatives such as Banking on Women, Better Work, She Works, Women on Boards, we are strengthening they are strengthening capacity of women entrepreneurs to grow their business, improving their employment opportunities and working conditions, and amplifying women's voices in as business leaders. So most importantly, along with other global organizations, the bank group has made universal access to finance by 2020 a top priority, which is not, it has just remained a dream. Making concerted efforts to expand women's access to finance, financial knowledge, and the products such as insurance to mitigate risk is a topmost priority. And it is in this context that we have three experts today. One, Mr. S Bhat, from CEO of Friends of Women's World Banking India, Ahmedabad. And discussants are Shweta Aprameya and Ms. Swati Chowdhary. First of all, I request Mr. S Bhat to make his presentation.
Thank you, Professor Vibhuti Patel. Good evening, everyone. Let me extend a hearty greetings on the occasion of 73rd Republic Day on the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav year. I think greetings to all of you. Thank you, Dr. Arjun Kumar, IMPRI, for the opportunity given to speak something about women's economic empowerment and also how to enhance access and accelerate credit and financial services to the women. Professor Vibhuti Patel has, in her introductory remarks, has given a lot of information about the global scenario and also what's happening in the country. Thank you very much, ma'am, for such a vast introduction and sharing so much about what's happening in the space, what are the initiatives that has been taken over the years, and what is the present status of the things. In that way, it has been a very comprehensive introduction for that. And I would like to thank IMPRI. I think the idea of having this talk series, special talk series on gender gaps and gender equality is the need of the hour. I think a lot of noise is required to bring the world's attention and the people's attention towards this area. As Professor Vibhuti Patel was mentioning, during the COVID years, I think the lot of amount or money which has to come for the women empowerment and women economic inclusion has been diverted to the health sector. I think this is one sector which has suffered the most in the last 2 years. That's where I think unless we make noise, unless we make the priorities very clear, unless we bring certain innovative and scalable models, this is not going to take the attention of the world. I think that is where I should congratulate IMPRI for such a great initiative in having a series of talks and dialogues with the field practitioners to bring home the necessity of women's financial inclusion in India. Let me share a presentation on this one. I also would like to thank Swati from Women's World Banking, and Swati has been working with the Women's World Banking. See, I can just mention that Women's World Banking has been working globally, which she will explain in her talk. Thank you, Swati, for joining me in this talk. And Shweta, one of the generation, now the new generation entrepreneurs who has been working for the cause of the women, and also one is powering the women. Second one is bringing technology close to the women. How technology can change the life of the women, how enterprises can develop with technology. And I should mention here and congratulate her on signing a MOU with NABARD for reaching the technology to the self-help group women at the last mile. Thank you, Shweta, for joining here, and definitely would like to hear more from you on the initiatives and how the other organizations can take this initiative forward. Having said that, I will move with the presentation. I have a, my screen is visible, na?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Women's financial inclusion in India, as I have mentioned, I think it is very much required in enhancing and accelerating access to finance and financial services. I would like to quote from the National Strategy for Financial Inclusion report by RBI. What it says, there has been a growing evidence on how financial inclusion has a multiplier effect in boosting overall economic output, reducing poverty and income equality at the national level. Financial inclusion of women is particularly important for gender equality and women's economic empowerment. With greater control over the financial lives, women can help themselves and their families to come out of poverty, reduce the risk of falling into poverty, eliminate their exploitation from the informal sector, and increase their ability to fully engage in measurable and productive economic activities. An inclusive financial system supports stability, integrity, and equitable growth. I think this para itself in the RBI's report, National Strategy, would drive the importance of financial inclusion among the women. Now, I would like to mention about my organization, that is Friends of Women's World Banking. As Professor Vibhuti Patel was mentioning, it was established by founder Ilaben Bhat in the year 1981. Ilaben Bhat, she started the Seva movement, which is one of the greatest financial inclusion for women. And what she said, the women, it is the women who are the leaders in change. I think if we empower the women, they will become the leaders in change. And without their direct participation in economy, poverty can never be removed. I think her statement, one, she initially established Women's World Banking Network globally. After that, she understood that, yes, there is a need in India also to give that focus. In that way, in order to promote greater participation of women, especially the low-income women in the economy, she started Friends of Women's World Banking India at Ahmedabad. And her desire was that Ahmedabad should be the women's finance capital. In that way, the Seva Bank and other institutions are here, which have been catering to the need of the women. And the vision of the organization, what we say, Friends of Women, we had a society based on equity and social justice, where women are active partners in holistic development. In fact, FWW sees the holistic development as the major core area in order to see that women develop in a holistic way. How do you do it? The mission is providing financial and capacity building services to organizations promoting livelihoods and self-reliance of poor women. One is capacity building services and also promoting the livelihoods of the grassroots level organizations. What happens is, if you have to have a sustainable model of inclusive development, you need to work with the grassroots level organizations who are working with women. In that way, if you develop the grassroots level organizations and develop the ultimate women, it will be a sustainable model. In that way, FWW believe in developing the grassroots level organizations. We have presence across 17 states in India, been working both east, north, west, and also in the northeast. I think northeast is one territory where people fear to go, but we have been there for last, say, 10 to 12 years serving the northeast, Manipur, and even Nagaland also. That has been the spread of the organization. Now, what is our outreach? See, what way we are able to reach? One is, as I mentioned, it is about the institutional building, to build the capacity of the institutions working with the women at the grassroots level. We have so far trained built capacity of more than 410 organizations across the country. Then the second aspect is on the women empowerment, how we are able to provide them the required inputs for, one is running their livelihoods, running their economic opportunities, and also running their enterprises. So far, more than 10 million women have been helped or assisted or impacted. When I say this organization has been running for the last 40 years and changing itself from time to time depending on the relevance or the market need, understanding the needs of the women. The other aspect is on the capacity building. Capacity building, what we understand is the empower women with right type of inputs so that they are able to, one, get self-confidence, become self-reliant, and also are able to generate income out of the activities they are running. No? to see that, yes, I am able to earn money on my own and I am able to have a decision-making power in my family, in my ecosystem. That is where the capacity building comes, and that's why we have been able to succeed, and we have been able to generate, say, grants also from the funders across both national and international donors. So far, more than, say, about 75 crores have been invested in capacity building of the low-income women at the grassroots level. One important aspect which I'm going to dwell in detail is the credit support. What we feel when we work with the women at the grassroots, the remote areas and other things, no? Okay, building capacity is fine, but going forward, what is that? How to make it sustainable? We know that for any economy to prosper, the financial system is very important. For any business to thrive, the capital is very important. In order to provide that capital, maybe it may be own capital or it may be debt capital, but these women at the low income level do not have their own capital. They should have even the starting capital or catalytic capital from the outside support only. In that way, FWWB tried to see that, yes, we provide the initial capital to them so that they are catalytic and they are able to start their business. When I say this, I am getting evidence of one of the women when I was serving in a bank. We have all heard name of Kiran Majumdar Shah, the MD of Viacom. You know, one of her meetings, she used to explain when she was starting her business in the year 80s and the 90s. No, she went around almost all the banks across Bangalore when she wanted to start the business there. None of the banks were able to provide her money. Say at that time, the capital required was just 25,000 rupees for her want to start the business. She made round for all the banks, but ultimately she was not able to get. But ultimately one bank, that was Canara Bank, which supported her. And now with that 25,000 rupees, she remembers now she has built an empire of Viacom, which can boast of international acclaim and also an inspiration for the women at large. I think if that 25,000 was not coming at that critical point of time, I think we'd not have seen such success of Kiran Majumdar Shah. Like that, many other entrepreneurs face such type of instances of getting that critical input of credit input at the right time. In that way, FWWB has been trying to see that this credit support is provided to the women who need the most at the right time. Now, understanding the macro context, as Professor Vibhuti Patel was mentioning about the world statistics, about the women and other things, no? How across the world it's going. At the global level, if we see about 985 million women are still financially excluded, and of the banked women, see about 1.75 billion banked women are there. In that, about 337 million are inactive. See, this is a report of 2017, maybe that latest report was also there. But the thing is, more than the opening of accounts in the banks, keeping them active is most important to see that the benefits are derived by these women. I think world over, this has been a problem. One, large number are financially excluded. Second, though they are included formally into the banking system, but their accounts are inactive or they are not able to transact. Thereby, proper use cases are not there to make them active. In that way, these two are the challenges when we see world over in the underdeveloped countries or even in the developed country space also. When we come to India, the Indian space, no, there has been strong momentum on account opening driven by the government. Even the Reserve Bank of India government also has been giving a lot of focus on driving this. And as per the National Family Health Survey, the women's account, which was say about 43% in 2014, has improved almost 80%, 6% in 21 to be precise. In that way, account opening from women has improved a lot thanks to PMJDY and also the Startup India scheme, which has a component of women in that. I think the Prime Minister Jan Dhan Yojana, which was started in the year 2014, has been able to drive actually the low income households, at large, say now so far about 44 crore, 440 million accounts are open with a deposit of close to 1,50,000 crores. But the thing is, it is very satisfying fact that almost 55% of the accounts are owned by women in this. But yes, we have been able to make that progress there. But what is the active usage of these accounts? It's a still key issue. How to make them active? Unless these accounts are made active, they will not be able to derive the economic benefit of this facility what they have been given. As Professor Patel was mentioning, as per the world's Findex data, about 42% of the women's accounts are dormant and 23% are excluded, as can be seen. And also 35% are, maybe 35% are the actual users of the account. This is an area where we need to, when we see, one is those who are excluded, they are to be brought into the system, at least just to start. Second thing is those who are included, how to accelerate their usage of these accounts and how to make them active in the financial space. These are the two challenges. The third thing is on when Professor Patel was mentioning on the aspect of the micro enterprises. See, when we see about 63 million micro enterprises in India, of that only say 13% belong to women. 13% are women owned. Within that, the 95% are micro units. That is the very fact which makes us to say that one is how you have to move these women entrepreneurs. One is from 13% to 30% or 40%. That's one thing. Second thing is about these women, the micro entrepreneurs who are there, who are at the say 95% level, how to reduce that percentage and move to the next level of say from nano to micro, micro to small, and small to medium. How that graduation has to happen? What are the essential requirements to make that happen? I think that is also a great issue which has to be deliberated at length to bring women's financial inclusion and making financial access to women on a larger scale. Then one more aspect is on the mobile phone ownership as compared to men. I'm also already told. Then uses of digital financial services is limited because there are a lot of limiting factors are there. But how it can be further improved, thanks to a lot of initiatives by Government of India and the private entities. Now there has been a lot of space created for that. But need of education is the thing which has to happen. Having said that, I think lot of efforts has been made by government, Reserve Bank of India, and even others also in this, having taken several steps, both and significant progress has been made. As we are celebrating, say, Amrit Mahotsav of our independence, no, lot of progress has been made and long distance has been traveled. But there is very long distance to be traveled yet, and there are a lot of initiatives yet to be taken to see that yes, whatever has to happen, that should get a lot of attention to see that our initiatives which we take now are further going forward. One important thing which has happened is about the nationalization of banks. It was one of the watershed events in the country to see that the financial inclusion, one. Second thing is even women's financial inclusion, also opening up rural branches and making known the banking to the rural folk and the women. That was one thing. Though they have not opened the account, yes, there is a bank, what it does and all those things, making them understand about the structure is one of the important things. Then improving the branch network across among the commercial banks, cooperative banks, regional rural banks. And thanks to Reserve Bank of India for starting this latest inventions of payment and small finance banks, which have been making large inroads into the the low income groups, second for the women also. Then the second and most important thing was, as Professor Patel was mentioning, about the self-help group movement in India. Self-help group movement is a group of informal group of women for doing certain activity, economic activity. But Reserve Bank of India, recognizing the importance of that, permitted opening of this informal account, opening of these groups in the banks. I think in the history of RBI has not permitted any entities which do not have any registration or legal identity. But this is one very important step which RBI has taken for furthering the women's financial inclusion by permitting SHG groups to open the accounts in banks, and that has traveled large distance now, and with now almost 10 million groups across the country and about 100 million women being helped in this sector. It's a great moment, and FWWP has been part of that. In fact, in the initial years, definitely training, when we started, when there were only 500 groups at that point of time, FWWP started the training this, how to build these self-help groups, what is the institutional structure they should have, what are the common Panchasutras they should imbibe in their running of their institute. That sort of training was given, and now we need to be proud that yes, initial foundation we have given, and now it has grown so large. So also the microfinance institution, and the microfinance institution, which boasts of say almost 60 million women. FWWP started the microfinance movement way back in 90s, wherein these MFIs were NGOs at that point of time, and they were building the capacities of the women. When we trained them at that point of time, they only understood that there is a need for credit for these women. So not only the capacity building, but the credit. At that point of time itself, FWWP started financing these NGO MFIs, and later they were converted. And at this point of time, I should remember the contribution of Mrs. Vijay Lakshmi Das, who was the CEO of FWWP, who has contributed in building. Now, if you see in the country, maybe at that point of time, about 130 MFIs, or all those MFIs have borrowed from FWWP and they have taken the training requirement from, and FWWP has been responsible in building this MFI sector. And that has been a great contributions in women's financial inclusion. If at all the credit has gone to the women that at the last mile, the poor women, the low income women, it is the microfinance movement which has made that happen. I think the proper regulation for MFIs also has been one of the very watershed movements in the Indian economic space. The next one is taking banking to the doorstep. That is appointing the business correspondent and the business facilitators by banks to provide doorstep delivery, which is a very convenient model for women. That is one of the steps. Then anyway, basic saving bank accounts. Then the next thing is the JAM Trinity, the Jandan, Aadhaar and mobile. I think Aadhaar has been the great game changer in the Indian economic space, both in terms of, say, providing identity to the last mile and also making them financially included. Now, if you have Aadhaar number, you put your thumb impression and get the bank account open. That is, it has been made so simple with invention of Aadhaar. I think maybe the account and mobile number addition to the accounts has made the other processes also simple. PMJDY, the insurance scheme, both life and on the accident insurance, Atal Pension, NPS, Pradhan Mantri, all these things have definitely helped in bringing this financial inclusion much closer to the women. Then the Financial Inclusion Index, which has been latest brought by Reserve Bank of India in April 2021, gives us information on the data side. what is lacking in the field, which are the areas to be touched, what are the almost 97 parameters have been examined. I think the organizations like FWWB and WWB can dwell on that report and try to work in those areas where there is a gap. That also has helped, and it will further help in making the financial inclusion more inclusive, more deepened and widened. The latest one, which helps the low-income micro enterprises to get the credit, is the account aggregation concept introduced by the Reserve Bank of India. I think it should help in giving a history of the transactions of the low-income women or low-income enterprises, whatever may be either the telephone or power bill or the other sort of collateral or surrogate characters what they have now. That account aggregation would definitely help in improving the financial inclusion across the country. Now, when we see this, all these steps have been taken, still why things are not happening? I think when we examine that, there are, what we find is there are 4 types of barriers which are affecting this financial inclusion for women. One, at the women level itself, at the low income level, women level, there are barriers which we say it may be patriarchal or so many things which we examine. Then there are again institutional barriers and also ecosystem barriers and advocacy barriers are also there. I think in this place, definitely on the client side, definitely institutions like ARTH, where Shweta is there. And in the institutional and advocacy system, WWB definitely has been working on that space. And on the ecosystem, definitely government and Reserve Bank of India are also playing a greater role. When we see individually, what are these inclusion barriers on the client side, that is for the women? Anyway, we agree that low awareness is there. Though so much of information is available, this is an information age, but there are people who do not know, who are not aware of many things available there. Even we may not be aware so many things about so many things. In that way, creating awareness has been the key, and that low awareness is one of the reasons. Then low levels of financial literacy. Yes, financial literacy, whatever amount of work we do is still less, because repetitive financial literacy things have to happen, and so that it is ingrained in the mind of the low income people, so that that low level of financial literacy is found. Then the insufficient collaterals, maybe one is in terms of obtaining the loan or in terms of getting the account out, that courage to go to the bank and open the account, or to talk to the bank people, to tell about their enterprise and other things. That sort of collateral is also missing. And lack of IDs to prove identity, though Aadhaar has been there, but there are still gaps in that. People have not been able to obtain Aadhaar, or they do not have sufficient other things to get Aadhaar. In that way, that identity also, wherever such identification we make, that has to be done. Then the comfort with technology. One is whatever new things you have to introduce, people should have the comfort, convenience, reliability, and safety of that. That comfort is not coming on technology even now, despite, but there is a lot of work to be done on that. Once we know the advantage of that, I think that would be. Then restrictive social and cultural norms. Yes, even now there are restrictive social and cultural norms, especially for the low-income women to come out and do the work, do employment and all those things. These are some of the barriers which we find. Then the institutional barriers, if we see, there are institutions undertaking the work, limited understanding on the products and the requirement of the women. Then mismatch between the needs and the requirement, whatever we are offering and requirements of the women, there is a lot of, because institutions have products which are on the shelf or which are made by them, and it is offered to them. We do not ask what we need, what you need. Depending on that, products are not there. Then lack of data on business case to serve women. A lot of data is not available to serve women. What is that information which we need to see for making a use case for driving the women products? And lack of gender disaggregated data to support designing of women-centric products. Many of the places we see that gender disaggregated data is not available, though information, some sort of information is available, but proper data, disaggregated data is not available. Then lack of policy focus. Maybe government is having a policy focus. In terms of credit, if we see, Government of India has got a mandate that from the banking system, at least 5% of the credit should go to the women beneficiaries. But it has been, say, way back, maybe in the 2010s or 2000s, that stipulation has been put. Though at present, as per the information available, the credit level is almost 10%, but I don't think that is sufficient. I think there is a need for policy focus on increasing the credit to women to a greater extent. And second thing is at the institutional level focus. The focus from the institutional level also has to be there. It's not that from the government, it is only there. Institutions working have to have a policy focus on assisting women, making women more inclusive in their work and their enterprises. In that way, that policy focus also is lacking. Then very few scalable and replicable business models. Like Professor Patel was mentioning, the Seva Bank model, the Mandeshi Bank model, and such other models are working in silos in only specific regions. Say Seva Bank, maybe Gujarat, in some other areas, Mandeshi Bank in Maharashtra. But that scalable models and replicable models have not been there. And I think there is a need for that. Then if we see the ecosystem barriers, whatever the lack of uniform ID is one thing which has been addressed to a great extent, but still. Then lack of tired KYC. I think this is one thing which RBI has examined and tried to provide. Say, suppose if a low risk and low volume customer wants to open an account, at just coming there and giving a declaration, subject to certain conditions, they should be able to open the account. If for higher risk or giving some time limit, that sort of tied KYC system also is required. Then the connectivity and infrastructure. Yes, there has been great improvement, but still people suffer from connectivity. It's good that Reserve Bank of India has brought even offline digital transaction also now. They are trying to work on that. But connectivity and infrastructure is one of the ecosystem barriers. Then ecosystem players. There are many players in the market, but again, they are working in silos. They are not collaborating in order to give a multiplier effect. I think that in order to get the multiplier effect, the ecosystem players have to collaborate, complement, and see that what best as a holistic measure we can give. That way, definitely work has to be done. Then exclusively focus on women on their holistic needs. There are organizations are there, but like Women's World Banking or Friends of Women's World Banking or Mandeshi Bank, exclusive focus on women, it is lacking. Large number of such organizations are required to ecosystem to develop in favor of women's access to financial services and finance. Now, what are the pathways to overcoming these barriers? I think tackling these hurdles, government, the regulators have played a greater role. And also in that way, FWWB, Women's World Banking, and even ARTH like enterprises have been working on those things. One thing is to overcome these barriers, as I mentioned, one is there is a need for gender smart products. And not only, as I said, that it is not the accounts alone. One, second, making the accounts into a transaction mode, then providing other services like savings, credit, pension, insurance, remittance facility, and all those things. Unless this suite is given to the women beneficiaries, the service of all the products under one roof, that sort of system is available, and that too available in a hassle-free way to these women. That will make a lot more easier for them. And efforts on awareness building. I think that awareness has to come. The organizations like the Ministry of Rural Development, Government of India, NABARD, then again, I can mention WWB and FWWB have been trying to bring awareness about women's financial inclusion and how they have to go about. Then on the technology, as I was mentioning, again, technology has been there, but people should be comfortable to use technology. They should know how to use it and what are the advantages. In that way, our Shweta's work has been there to make the women entrepreneurs. She will be explaining more on that. And the improved network and accessibility. Yes, country has a very ambitious plan of covering all the 6,25,000 villages with broadband network. Many of the villages have already got it, making it sustainable and uninterrupted supply of this internet facility and accessibility is one of the most important factors. Otherwise, interrupted supply means people will not have belief on that. They will not transact on that mode. They will go for a cash or other mode when it is not reliable. Then human resources, trained and sensitized human resources is the requirement. If I can take an example of this microfinance industry. Microfinance industry holds about, say, 60 million women, unique women they are serving, industry is serving. Suppose if you ask who are the people serving for these women, 60 million women, maybe about 1,25,000 staff members are employed by microfinance. What is the number of women employed by these microfinance institutions? How many women are heading the microfinance institutions? Whether we have worked in that direction to provide women leadership for leading the microfinance organizations, which will in turn help in getting women better access to credit and other things. Second thing is at the staff level, hardly 9 to 10% are women staff. If women are there, if they are sensitized, definitely they would be able to more comfortably transact with the women staff at the field level. That definitely has to happen. Then overall enabling environment on regulations and policy, because like IMPRI is doing, I think these talks have to be there, and that should be a lot of cry that yes, policy support is not enough. It has to come and regulations have to change. If I can mention that, see, if you see the RBI guidelines on the private sector, on the credit to women, there is no word. I think those things have to come in the regulatory prescription that yes, credit to women is also one of the important segments. That should be some sort of mention in the regulatory document. Government of India says, but again, it is not followed up or further envisioned to see that further improvement is there. In that way, these barriers, in order to overcome these barriers, these are some things which we can talk of. Then when I was mentioning on the technology, the fintech is one place where definitely it will make the life easier for women. I can, somebody can mention about the time I have now so that I can speed up. Fintech to play a very crucial role to enhance access to finance to women. And I think Shweta would be explaining more on this because of the, it provides easy qualifying norms, greater convenience, efficient operations and cost savings. I think here one is hassle-free, cost-effective, and also the simple. Once they're convinced about the product, once they're confident of using that, I think that will have a very rapid multiplier effect among the women, especially the younger lot now. Definitely when they are now in the cusp of developing further, when we introduce at that point of time, that fintech definitely is going to play a game changer role in this aspect. And coming to the experience of FWWB as a lender, apart from the fund, what we have seen is credit is definitely a major requirement for sustainable livelihood and enterprises for the low-income women. As Professor Patel was mentioning, women are the best borrowers and they are the best repairs. When we see the self-help group movement, 100% recovery has been there. Even now, even though when the industry, the bigger industries are talking about 15 to 20% of NPAs, in the SIG segment, it's hardly about 4 to 5%. That is the thing. I think these sectors have to be nurtured further. Government has been trying to do that. Now increasing the loan amount to 20 lakhs and providing a guarantee for that. And in the microfinance segments also, there is a revised guideline which is going to come shortly, helping. What we have told or suggested to the Bank of India is that yes, there should be a mention about women. There should be a focus on client protection of women. There should be focus on the capacity building of women from the microfinance segment, so that women are aware, and on being aware, they are availing the credit. As we have seen, credit is a very crucial need to be met for these women. But unless the mainstream financial institutions involve themselves in purveying the credit, it is not going to reach the mass. Because organizations like FWWB or many other Mandeshi Bank or Seva Bank and all those things, no, they do, it will be in, say, they have the limited capacities. Unless the mainstream financial institutions adopt this as a main strategy, it will not take that scale. But there are a lot of roadblocks for that. One is on the lack of credit history, which we are trying to build through this. One is the microfinance movement. Second one is SHG movement, making even the individual women also to report to the credit bureaus. That is then lack of collateral. Anyway, the guarantee support system, either by Government of India or even FWWB, tried to provide guarantee for the financial institutions on behalf of women. At that point of time, also many of the banks are not very convinced to give loan to the women. But at that point of time, FW started itself on that. That collaterals, wherein these guarantees would definitely help in flowing more money towards women's enterprises. Then when we see women, where do they go for accessing credit? One is where it is easily available, where it is at their doorstep, and it is convenient for them to avail from that source. In that way, the informal lending one network, that is one thing. Then the peer, this one, then the SHGs and GLGs. But here, in the SHGs where the Government of India has come, the NRLM groups are able to get at a lesser rate. But in other cases, it is at a higher rate. Even in the microfinance also, about 25 to 26%. In that way, when we are able to make, say, housing loans and car loans at 6 to 7%, why we should not be able to? If these mainstream financial institutions come to this line, they will be definitely able to provide at, say, if not 6 to 7%, at least 10%. Instead of paying 26%, if they are able to get at 10%, I think that's a long service and a great service we are doing to the community. FWWB in its own way has been trying to work in this space, that is on the information access. Information, as I was telling, that lack of awareness at the women level. This information we have been able to provide from all sources. What is the resource locally available? What is that government support that is coming? What are the enterprises they can set up and all those things? To make this happen, we have this classroom training for these women entrepreneurs or the low-income women. One which builds their literacy efforts. We are trying to build their literacy efforts. Second one is the cross-learning. A progressive woman within the community can generate motivation among the other women to come forward and learn more about the things. Then we identify that livelihood and entrepreneurship and try to empower them, both in terms of financial skills, business skills, and also in accounting and financing skills. Then integrate with technology. See, wherever we support these women entrepreneurs with the training and the capacity building support, no, we make it a point to see that they understand the payment channels like Google Pay or Beam Pay, then UPI payments and other things. That's one thing. Then how to promote their products on WhatsApp or even Instagram or Facebook. That's the second thing. Third thing is how to keep the record with simple apps like, say, Khata Book or Mera Bills or these type of these ones, or even say Excel sheets, also small Excel sheets, how to, in order to see that they understand technology at a lower level and try to adopt that. Once we have all these things for the women, the next thing what comes is the credit, financial support, the required credit we are providing to them. See that, yes, their cycle is complete. They are able to, one, jumpstart their activity and see that they are becoming a role model for other women in the community. If a successful woman starts an enterprise in one area, there will be 10 other women who are motivated to start and try to seek the information from where she has got that information, how she has been able to set up this enterprise, what is the support available. that with the word of mouth publicity, people will be aware, and this type of things I think would done at larger scale would definitely help. And as I told, now we have been working on the holistic support for the women. One is on the entrepreneurship and livelihood side, support programs, both in terms of capacity building and credit. Then on the agricultural finance also, because we see that almost 80% of the people depend on agri and allied activities. In that way, promoting women in agriculture, building their capacities, building the collectives is also both in terms of capacity building and credit support. Then on the water and sanitation, because health is a very important segment for the women, and it's a dignity for the women at the rural areas, providing the sanitation and water facilities, drinking water facility, and also the sanitation. And the other thing is the solar energy, solar equipment. What we find at the rural areas is even in the kitchen, that solar energy requirement equipment helps her in definitely making her health much better. And also even while going for the children to study wherever in the power-starved areas, that definitely helps. And these small interventions have helped the women at the last mile to see that, recognize the importance of this and see that it is now water and sanitation has become a moment, solar has become a moment, definitely, but there should be some person to start that activity and see that it goes well and it is adopted by the community. That way we have been, now we are trying on the digital inclusion, both in terms of savings, pension, and also other facilities what I mentioned, no? Working with fintechs and other things about because women need long-term savings, that is in terms of pension, but it's very hard to convince for women for long-term savings. But definitely once they save when they become old, definitely that will be a savior for them. In that way, we are trying to work on that line. These are all the things what we have done. I would like to just explain one or two examples with what support SWA has been given. This is Gresime Shibre from Ukrul, Manipur. She is one of the beneficiaries of our training program in Manipur. She was doing a small business. After the capacity building training of say 1.5 years to 2 years, she wanted to expand her business. After gaining the skills and knowledge and the business skills from the training program, she wanted credit support. In that way, 1 lakh credit support was also given. We have devised a separate scheme for assisting those women who are beyond the MFI category, those women who require 75,000 to 1 lakh loan. No, in such category, yes, exclusive loan would be given to the women whom we have trained. In that way, she has been able to improve her income, say to up to 1 lakh now, with a profit of about 40,000. More than that, she has adopted technology in all her. One is on the, she has all the payment channels she is using, both for vendor payment and also collections, customer collections. Second thing is on the inventory maintenance also, she's using that and promoting her product. She is selling her cakes on the Instagram. She is promoting her cakes on the Instagram. With that, she has been improve her sales during the Christmas and New Year time. That has been, she was proudly sharing with us that with this, we have been able to improve my income. In that way, these type of initiatives definitely would help spur growth among the women entrepreneurs. And this is again Elsie from Waram, again Ukrul, Manipur. She has been able to develop her say vegetable and the pickle preparation. Why I am giving this is she has been able to develop that idea of say refrigeration and pickle manufacturing. Try to sell. Now she is trying to online market these products also. In that way, she has been able to substantially improve. Here, one is capacity building and the critical credit, that 1 lakh credit, which has made her life change to see economically self-reliant. Now she says that I'm economically self-reliant, one thing. I have the decision-making power in my family. I can say that, yes, we can do this, we cannot do this, and other thing. Even the ecosystem also, people come to her and seek her advice as to what should be done. And about the new setting up of business also, people come and seek her advice as to what business I can start. She has been a marketeer for the schemes which we have developed, and she has been able to develop, bring more women to this sort of activity. That way, some small contribution we have been making in bringing women economically empowered and to start some activity, livelihood and enterprise activity. I think I would conclude at that point of time. Again, thanks IMPRI for such a great opportunity of explaining our initiative and also on the need for developing the products for women and also making it sustainable for women to understand the requirements of their requirements. That way, thank you very much. If anybody wants to take the services of our organization, definitely we have given the details. Definitely we are happy to serve and we're happy to take questions also. Thank you, Professor Patel and Arjun Kumar for the opportunity given. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I'll stop here.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. S Bhat, for very, very comprehensive understanding of this issue and also explaining to us, you can know that in most of the programs of IMPRI, there are more than 100 people, but the phobia for financial management is so strong that even among the NGOs and women's organizations, there is no such proactive approach. So I think it's going to be very, very helpful, your talk, because IMPRI's discussions are there in several platforms. So what I want, my only response to your presentation is that now we need to mobilize public opinion for gender responsive budgeting in the area of credit support, number one. Number two, that during the 80s when SEVA started, so many state governments were taking differential rate of interest. So I think that also movement has to be started, that there were only 4% rate of interest was taken from women entrepreneurs. And third one, that whole talk about microfinance bill, which has now been shelved. And we have heard, like in the recent public hearing in Kolhapur, where I was present, and I was chairing that session. So many women from the Mufussil areas in the peri-urban district and the Tehsil places, tribal areas, they told about the terror created by the bouncers and recovery agents. So I think we need to really push this microfinance, the accountability system for the private microfinance institution, and why not to directly strengthen, why in the union budget we have to support private financial institution rather than supporting women's collectives, no? Yeah. So that is my input. Now I think I request Ma'am Swati Aprameya to make a presentation, to respond to this.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm very excited to be part of this dialogue, and thank Professor Patel for setting the stage so beautifully, and then Bhat sir for giving such a comprehensive talk of women's financial inclusion, inclusive development, and especially the barriers that he spoke about that women face. So this is the part that I'd like to double click on. Women being an important customer segment, and discussing on making this case for investing in women today. So as a brief introduction, I work with Women's World Banking. A little about us. We are a 40-year-old global nonprofit. We are devoted to giving more low-income women access to financial tools and resources, which are essential to their security, their prosperity. We work with a diverse group of financial service providers, and we equip these institutions to meet the women's need. And this we do through technical advisory, which also creates proof of concepts. There's market research, there's leadership training, tailored financial products that Bhat sir had referenced, consumer education, and investing in women-led institutions. We also have a diverse network of like-minded institutions who are all committed to serving the low-income women. So we have around 61 organizations in 33 countries, and globally we have a reach of 92 million women. FWWB is one of our founding network members and has guided this entire thought. Our recent work in India has been with different financial service providers to, Bhat sir's point in terms of mainstream organizations needing to step in. So you have Bank of Baroda, who's a public sector bank, Ujjivan, it's a small finance bank, and Fino, a payment bank, and Lending Card, a fintech. So we've worked with them on designing women-centric solutions for increased usage, because as we know, the index, as we see, there are three parts to it. There is access, there's usage, and there is quality of services. And as Bhatsa referenced, that access is something which is largely taken care of. Now we have to concentrate on increased usage. So this we're doing by increasing awareness, building a compelling proposition, and an effective relationship-oriented channel. Now, I just wanted to start with the common understanding which has been built, widely accepted that better and relevant financial inclusion initiatives, they reduce gender inequalities. And women who have access to bank accounts, savings mechanisms, other financial services, they are better able to have a control over their earnings and undertake personal and productive expenditure. And what it actually results in is, if you look at the household, it helps reduce the exposure of households to income shock. And therefore, the growth is improved. There's a more sustainable and equitable development. We heard all these large numbers about how globally how many women still remain financially excluded, and there is this very stubborn gender gap of 9% that persists in developing countries. In the Indian context, we, Patsa spoke about the PMJDY infrastructure that is created, and we've definitely made significant strides. We have 80% of Indians who own a bank account, and 79% of Indian women are owning it, and it's a huge jump, because in the past, the last global index, it was 43%. And on this basic measure of financial inclusion, women are definitely more financially included than before, and the gender gap is narrowed to 6.4 percentage. And if you see, it's obviously lower than whatever the average which is there in the region. However, when we look at these significant improvements in the access parameters, we now need an increased focus on improved engagement of these customers with banks. Looking at usage, now women form 55% of this account base. So, of the total, there's 232 million accounts which are held by women. But if you look at the usage, it's estimated to be 33%. But, this is one data point. Now you look at the fact that even though women are not on par with men in terms of this usage of financial services, there is evidence that shows that they are more adept and resourceful at money management. If you look at the same number of women who were able to use their savings when facing a financial crisis compared to men. Now, this was despite the fact that the ownership and usage was lower. This is even more exemplary if you consider the fact that women are less exposed to formal financial services than men. So, I mean, these are the main numbers that I'd like to share. I mean, women right now represent the world's largest and the fastest growing market. Yet they remain overlooked, they remain underserved. So what do we need to do? We need to look at women as a distinct customer base. And this is definitely going to drive our growth. It's half of our population, next emerging market of the world. And that's an absolute fact. You pick up any report. Over next 4 years, the global contribution of women is estimated to grow to 18 trillion US dollars. I mean, like a mind-boggling amount. And they say that by 2028, women are going to control 3/4 of the discretionary spending. So you just look at what an attractive customer base this is. So if you see, aside from a handful of players that are focused on creating solutions for women from the very beginning, women's distinct needs and preferences, they've been overlooked. And what happens then? In doing so, if you look at even from mainstream organizations, we're leaving huge gains on the table. And it's time for that to change. So therefore, I'm not looking at the constraints. I'm just saying what a huge opportunity. I mean, women are an untapped gold. We need to make financial products work well for women. And for that, we need to design for their barriers. And the absence of which obviously impacts their overall engagement. And, this is something that we truly believe in an organization, that if you're not designing for women, you're designing for men. But the converse is not true. When you design for women, it works well for your entire customer base. So with that as a backdrop, let's talk about women as a customer base. We both, Professor Patel and Bhatsa have made comments about the fact that women make great customers, and it's something that we know. We try to understand them better. I mean, they ask a lot of questions, so which means that women are slower to adopt. But once they are satisfied, they're a more loyal customer base. They tend to use lesser number of providers. And what does this result in? It's a same or lower acquisition cost and a higher customer lifetime value. they also bring in more business as they're more likely to refer more customers. And as women customers, if you see, they process the information in different ways. So they're also more likely to act on that recommendation, especially when it comes from a trusted source. And I've been a part of a lot of these customer awareness and literacy initiatives, and you clearly see between men and women, women are advocates for formal savings among the family and community. They have higher usage rates when they become comfortable with the product. They're stickier savers. They may save smaller amounts over a longer period of time, but they tend to keep the money in the bank. And when they take it out, they use it for larger purchases like education. So they're always saving towards a goal. And this can be evidenced by the same or the average account balances of women, even with the reduced usage rates. They're reliable borrowers, as we've heard. Both controlled experiments, analysis, global data sets, everything indicates that women tend to be better credit risks. And financial institutions which have more women clients, they have lower portfolio at risk ratios. And they're an attractive segment to cross-sell other bank products. Women often they're also taking the lead role in managing the household finances. So as a result, women customers are a valuable segment for any financial service provider. If you take a gender intelligent approach, if you move beyond creating gender neutral products, not just like the changing the look and feel of it, if you tap into this segment in a meaningful way, we need to have a women-centric customer proposition, a data-driven, tailored approach that focuses on a couple of things. The first is overcoming women barriers. Second is solving for what their needs are, or what their unique life moments. And this research helps identifying us to identify that, and then providing them appropriate incentives. Why should they bank with you? And such a great customer base. One such example that I'd like to share is the work that we're doing with a leading public sector bank, where we designed a savings scheme specifically for women. It invited the customers, especially women, to save regularly with the bank and lead them to a potential access to emergency credit, which we know as the PMJDY overdraft. This was received well, both by the men and the women, though it was designed for the barriers that women faced. We found 32% of women who were committed to saving versus 25% of the men. The women who saved grew their balances by 36% during the 5-month project period versus 24% by men. This showed that when given an opportunity, women engage with financial service providers. So, what I'm trying to say is the base philosophy of this entire approach is that there are two stakeholders here. You have women who we are, clearly seeing as this really attractive customer base, and the institution that seek to serve them. They are equally important from a long-term sustainability of women financial inclusion. Why? Because, designing for women customers helps us to put her at the center, understand her needs, develop financial products and services that work for her. And the ones which are, they're easy, intuitive for her to use. They help her manage her financial life with confidence. On the other hand, when you look at all these mainstream financial service provider, it's critical to address their needs as well, because it ensures sustainability and scalability of the solution, because that's the need of the hour. All this is very real, very possible. And therefore, just going back to what is our biggest untapped opportunity would be the usage rates. We need to make these financial products work well for women. Because in the absence of that, it's impacting their overall engagement. The other thing is, I want a point that Patsa made was about the absence of gender disaggregated data. What happens? The institutions don't often realize that women have unique needs, and therefore the policies that they have or the products that they have, they may be limited in providing solutions which are tailored to their needs. So by focusing on increasing awareness, reaching out to these women where relevant communication and distribution channels, and most importantly, acknowledging the potential of these customers as a key lever to household financial empowerment and prosperity. These are the various ways that we can accelerate women's financial inclusion. And we can build this on this robust infrastructure that already exists. So, formally targeting them, designing simple products and services, improving access is a mutual win-win. It's for the women, FSP, and for the size of this opportunity, it should be attractive for everybody to take a forward step. And beyond the potential economic impact, when we invest in women, we know that it yields undeniable societal returns. So women on an average invest 90% of their income back into their families compared to 35% for men. A strategic focus when we look at women, the potential that it has the potential to expand markets, to fuel economic progress and improve health and education outcomes. So therefore, I mean, what I'd like to end with and leave with everybody is that when women thrive, I mean, the societies thrive, and all these numbers help us see that. Thank you.
Vibhuti, unmute.
Now I request Ms. Shweta Aprameya to make a presentation.
Thank you, Professor Patel, and thank you, Bhat sir. I think every time we have a session and you are speaking, it just inspires me and motivates me to do a lot more. So thank you for motivating me to do a lot more in the sector. And Swati, wonderful thoughts. I think you have really laid out some very important points, and trust me, I fully echo everything that you said. And I think directionally there is so much to do, and the potential remains to be untapped. I think every forum we discuss this. So let me just set a context and also share a little bit about ARTH. So while I've been in the sector for 15 years, working in the financial inclusion space, my background is in banking and technology. Starting with my first startup, which was back in 2013, was focused on migrants and was focused on micropayments, and was later bought by Patel. But last 2.5 years, I've been focusing on setting up really almost, I would say, it's a fintech, but really focused on developing a proposition for nano and micro enterprises, which are women focused. And I think why I say this with a little bit of thought is the space is very complex, very heterogeneous, and lots going on in the last 4 to 5 years in terms of the MSME sector overall. So from that bigger sort of spectrum and landscape to then carve out an area which is nano and micro enterprises, and then look at women is another level of complexity. And that's why I love this space, and that's why I think we are facing whatever challenges. In fact, ARTH was built during the COVID time, so I love what we are going through, and I'll share some examples of what we did during COVID. I see this, what we're trying to do in really 7 parts, and I think I will try to cover each of them with some context and some examples. So I think the first thing is really about outreach. So when we started thinking about how are we going to look at this new way of delivering access to affordable credit in a digital manner, the first question was, how will the outreach happen? Because traditionally the model has been built on, the great work which has happened around SHGs, and then of course the GLG model, where there's a community and then there is a set of people coming together. But then how do you look out for, how are you hunting for a micro enterprise? That's the bigger question. And then how do you hunt that at scale? That's another level. So the first thing that we are trying to do is build a distribution platform where we can identify various types of stakeholders that exist in hyperlocal markets. Whether it is NGOs, civil society organizations, retired professionals, servicemen, all the reliable networks in hyperlocal markets. Because they have to be the trusted network who actually know the areas and who know what kind of retailing is happening in those areas. Whether it is home-based businesses, whether it is distribution networks, whether it is mom and pop shops, whatever kind of business it is, we first need to identify those networks and bring them on the platform. So that's the first thing that we are trying to do, which will help us to identify who are we looking for, who is it micro enterprise, and how do we find them, without really going into to say that, oh, we need to identify a certain set of people and then we will start just giving credit as a product. So that's the first thing that we are trying to do. Build a first of its kind distribution model, which will be through a network of trusted individuals, professionals, or groups across occupations and across sectors. So that's the first thing. The second thing is around data, and I think we all spoke about it. We know that data is very heterogeneous, very unstructured, and sort of very self-declared. So every time we do this discussion, but how do you rely on this? This is what he or she told you. So if we are intelligent set of people who have to keep complexity at the back, then we have to consume everything which is available, because every data is meaningful. So what we've been doing over the last 2 years is proactively acquiring and curating enormous amount of data. So across women groups, across networks, across partners, we are just consuming data and trying to make sense everything which is on self-declared basis, whether it is social information, economic information, including health, including sanitation, including bank account details. If they're telling us everything is self-declared, everything is optional. So we have been curating and collecting a lot of data over the last 2 years. And now we are at a stage where we have now understood certain sets of occupation and certain behaviors in specific areas. And why I say this, because our large focus has started in UP, because we didn't want to spread too thin, but this specific approach we started in UP, and now of course Haryana, and then we are going towards Rajasthan. So this is the second approach, really using unstructured information to tap into information which could give you meaningful results without over questioning the customer about whether they are giving you the right input or not. So that's the second thing that we're doing. The third thing, which I think everybody alluded to, is what's the product? I mean, okay, you've reached out, you have information which is making some sense, but then what are you sort of offering to them? And this is one thing which I realized working in the space for some time, and with such great people, devoting so many years, is that one thing which has happened is when women in this segment think about credit, they think, oh, this is what I'm going to get. So they have a preconceived notion that I'm going to get a term loan in this order. They're unable to take their imagination beyond to say that if I'm running a poultry business, should I be taking something which sort of doesn't, I don't have to pay something which is every week, every month. Can I do something beyond that? Can I sort of tailor it to say that, okay, let me do it 3 months or 6 months, or, start my EMI after? Where's the flexibility to somebody who runs a poultry small business? Then what about dairy? Then what about a woman who runs, starting a saloon? Right? What's the typical footfall? Can I really afford a weekly repayment or not? Right? So I think that's the third thing that we started doing. We developed our platform, which is a product platform, fully configurable. So the moment we take a decision on credit, we can offer any type of tenor, any type of flexibility to the customer. And we have been experimenting on this for now 1.5 years, and I think we've made some good strides. So from a behavior standpoint, it still remains to be a challenge, because the woman has a preconceived notion, and it has set in her mind that I need a certain type of credit. And we are trying to break that barrier to say that you tell us what you want, and we will think through the flexibility, understand what occupation you are into, and then really realize that what kind of credit you should be getting. So this is another, I think, level of dimension which we are playing with, that how much flexibility can we offer. But from a technology standpoint, we've made it completely configurable and very, very flexible to make sure that we offer the right type of credit. I mean, we're not even discussing insurance. We're not even discussing savings. I mean, those are products that, will get layered on much later. The fourth part which we realized was around engagement. So once you offer a certain product, which is, let's say, in some form flexible, based on the occupation that, one is engaged in, what's the engagement framework? I mean, we've had the traditional model where we have our loan officers who would go out in the field, but what is the engagement which is happening between the loan officer and that customer? And I think that's another level where, the information asymmetry which happens during that process really doesn't really come to the company. So we've started building a process where we call ourselves as ARTH happiness officers, who are continuously engaging virtually with the customers. Sometimes, of course, it's telephonic. We've got WhatsApp for business, so we're engaging with them on WhatsApp. We're also doing some video calls. So we are trying to understand how we can have a continuous engagement with our customer over a period in time to really understand what's going on in business and build that trust and a safe environment for them to tell us what's going on. Because that's another thing. I mean, how much do you really know about women who's taken business from you? It's very, very little information. So that's the fourth part, is what is engagement. Fifth, which has been a tremendous learning for us, is behavior. I mean, technology can do a lot of magic, but if there is no behavior change, nobody can do anything. So we realized that all of us, even, the space that we are in, right, we get rewarded for certain change in behavior. I mean, how much reward have we thought about for women to show a certain change in behavior? So while we are doing this engagement, telling them, your credit has gone into your account, your repayment is coming, you downloaded that application. By the way, we also developed a chatbot, which is called Khushi, which we sort of help them, and it runs on Telegram as well. So it basically gives them a pop-up if there is a message, but these are all learning phases. But then without a reward or an incentive framework, how do we bring the right behavior change? I mean, not for everything, but what's the motivation? So we've also been thinking of certain smaller things around loyalty and retention and rewards and incentives to bring behavior change, as far as what is the usage that they have, whether it's a credit product and credit being used through a technology platform. So that's the other big thing. And this is our biggest goal for this year, is to really figure out different ways of creating a reward framework for women to start showing some behavior change, which is positive, which is good for them, but it is also rewarding and motivating. There is this thing around scalability. So how do you bring the scale? the $1 million question, and I know Bhat was alluding to it, and hats off to everything that Seva has done and Mandeshi has done in different regions across India. We have also been thinking about it, and last 2 years, if you ask me, we have, as a company, from the model that we've implemented, which is a distributed technology-based platform, we've already reached out to 3.5 lakh customers. Our reach could be really almost like a virtual or a faceless organization. But we are creating a hybrid model. We are setting up satellite offices so that we are present. We don't run a branch model, we run a satellite office model. But everything else we are building on our tech platforms with a lot of focus on engagement and behavior change. And our thought around scalability, which is still something that we have to crack, is what we started doing with NABARD. So last 4-5 months, we started discussing with NABARD as well that what's the new micro enterprise development model. And in fact, Bhat sir will remember there was another panel which happened some 6-7 months back where he was there. And this was the big topic, that what is the new micro enterprise development model. And I think from there onwards, we discussed with NABARD. And what we realized was that we need to have a very integrated framework if we want to scale. And it will not happen by one organization. If we today stand and say that, okay, ARTH can solve a fully scalable micro enterprise development model, it would be very difficult to say. Would we want to become the first micro MSME gender focused bank one day? Of course we would want to. but how do we bring that level of scale? And that's when we started to say that, okay, women do certain occupations. They are very good with some of the occupations, whether it's food, whether it is services like tailoring or boutiques and some things like that, right? Even transportation, right? Why are we missing transportation? So we did some research over the last 5 to 6 months. And we said that, okay, why don't we bring these stakeholders who are sort of consumers of these services into the play? So good example is, we said, okay, let's figure out that if we had to build, let's say 500, 1,000, 10,000 women who can own cloud kitchens in hyper-local markets, what would that model look like? Okay, so we need a food cart, or maybe we need some sort of a toolkit which says that you can build your cloud kitchen. And then we need to bring in Swiggy on the platform. and say that, hey, by the way, here are these 2,000, 20,000 or 50,000 women who are now ready as a toolkit, and they are ready to come on your platform. So we said there are certain 6-7 occupations that we can work with, wherein there is a capacity building, which can happen initially, a credit linkage for anybody who's gone through the capacity building, which is a full toolkit. And then there is a platform player who comes on board, whether it is an urban clap, whether it is a Swiggy or a Zomato, whether it is VLCC equivalents of the world, anybody for that matter. So we've identified some 10 on this specific program. They will be the actual consumers of their services. And that is the model which can bring scale. If we can do that in one state, occupations don't dramatically change. So somebody in Madhya Pradesh, if wanting to start a cloud kitchen, the unit economics might be different, but the toolkits are not majorly different. We can take the same toolkit and take it to Tamil Nadu, and then ask Swiggy to do the same in Tamil Nadu. Just open up the platform to them. So these are certain things which we are thinking in terms of scale, that we produce the right services with the right products, and then partner with ecosystem who are going to be the consumers of those services to bring that scale, which is now technically called embedded finance. And I know there is a lot of conversation around embedded finance, but embedded finance is nothing but really financing for the right use case. So that is what ARTH wants to do as far as connecting the dots and creating those linkages. We can't do everything ourselves. We will bring sort of the product and service, and we will bring the consumers of services on the same platform to bring that sort of scale. That's our ambition. We don't know, but that's what we are going to try and do with NABARD on a much smaller scale and sample over the next 1 year. And that's something we feel if we succeed, maybe that's a model which we can then templatize and scale. So this is the work that we are doing. And as I said, technology is layered across all these 7 steps. So whether it's outreach, whether it is data, whether it is engagement, whether it is behavior, whether it is the right products and service, scalability, and most importantly, I just need 1 minute for this, because I hope in the gender response budgeting or some format, this comes up, and I would love to be part of this. Somebody's writing a paper or note and submitting it to the government. There's something called vulnerability support. So what we realized during COVID was to this point to say that the moment COVID shock happened, everybody just wanted to collect. So it's sort of the reverse logic, right? You should not have been collecting at this point in time. I mean, we needed a little bit more empathy to say that let us think about something else instead of just saying whatever you've little left in your pocket, just give me. So what we did was we went to foundations and we said that, okay, Revive Alliance and some of the really good alliances gave us, grants and pools of money where we gave interest-free loan, even to those who were not showing any repayments. Because what we told them was the time is coming, and whenever you restart your business, you can sort of pull this credit. But we realized that we need something called this vulnerability support fund. So I'll give an example about myself. So as a startup entrepreneur, if I take an equity, somebody puts an equity in my business, and for some reason, I'm not able to perform, right? I have the right to fail. And every startup entrepreneur who is doing so many great startups in India and are very well funded by VCs and PE funds have the right to fail. Why we don't have our nano and micro entrepreneurs right to fail, especially in vulnerable times? This vulnerability support fund has to be at the heart of everything. If there is a shock, we need to have some sort of a fund to support this ecosystem as opposed to take whatever little they have back from them. This is not called giving them a moratorium. And I think this is where people confuse, right? We don't want to give them moratoriums and overburden them. This is a vulnerability support fund. And this has to be defined, this has to be articulated. We will see more of these climate changes happening in the future. How will we make sure that these women feel safe if there is a vulnerability shock that happens?
Okay.
And what does that look like? It's not just an emergency fund, it's something more. It has to be defined and articulated better. So these are the dimensions that we think about at ARTH. We talk to stakeholders about, and we in fact work very, very proactively wherever we get an opportunity. We've just working with another donor or something called Pay for Performance, where we are helping those who are in sort of several buckets, you can say delayed buckets, to say that we know something happened in your business. Here's an opportunity for you to come and repay back and continue to build your business and then get a reward for it. So we work with various mechanisms, but this vulnerability support fund is very, very important. Apart from, of course, if the big lenders can reduce their interest rates, we have a long wish list. But but this, I think, needs a little bit more thought from the experts.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. These were some things that I could share, but happy to take any questions.
Yeah. Extremely relevant presentation in current context. I think it was such a learning for me, because I have been exposed to only traditional microfinance institutions and the kind of multi-pronged problems that the women from the poverty groups face. So I think that now floor is open for Q&A. Participants, you can unmute and ask question. Anybody who wants to speak or share examples, their own case studies or their own experiences, you are free to do that, and you can ask your question to any of the three panelists. Yeah. Because there is nothing in the chat box also, and there are no questions. But I think about the gender responsive budgeting, I would like to say that we need to take it up very seriously. And as I think Mr. Bhat also told us, that whatever is the NGOs are doing, whether they are Annapurna or Seva or Working Women's Masoom or Mandeshi, your reach is limited. Okay, what the state can do is much more. And during 80s, if we had political will to support such organization, why not now? So that political will we need to create, and I think Niti Aayog and all the Ministry of Finance also has to be convinced. And I think there is going to be another very exhaustive panel discussion by IMPRI on 3rd of February on gender responsive budgeting. So I think we can link it up. But today's discussion I found very rich. And would you like to take 2 minutes to just tell your views on way ahead, what we need to do immediately in the current context? Yeah. Mr. Bhat? Yeah.
Yeah, one thing is, as we are told now, that focus, what IMPRI is doing now, build the ecosystem towards that goal. Yes, there is a need for talking about women entrepreneurs, and creating a supporting system. I think that is very much important. Second point is the policy focus. Yes, policy focus has to be intensified to deepen and widen this reach. Because if we see, there have been sporadic successes, but these sporadic successes have to be scaled. How to do that? Unless the state comes in and supports those things, no, that will not happen. I think that is the second thing which has to happen. Third thing is the awareness. Yes, even if you have 1,000 products on the shelf, if you are not aware of the usefulness of the product or the available product there, you are not doing any service. In that way, awareness building is also very important. I think these are the 3 points I'd like to see that is the most important things.
Very, very important. All 3 points are extremely important. And yes. Swati Chowdhary, what would you like to say?
So I would say again, 3 points. The first one is about recognizing women as an important customer segment. So all the organizations to take forward step in that. The second one is about gender disaggregated data, the importance of that. I mean, I cannot overstate the importance of it. The third one, as Patsa said, about thinking in terms of how do you bring factors together so that it unlocks change. So about building this coalition of the willing, even in the most informal manner. The organizations such as government, the PSPs, BFSI players, fintechs, all of them bring different things to the party. And if we can think of how we build effective partnerships, it would definitely help in accelerating women's financial inclusion.
Very important, and especially in today's context, when 40% of women who lost their job in the informal sector, they are not getting back, and because there is unemployment, they are becoming self-employed, and they need credit. No, so it's very, very important. And now, Shweta Aprameya ji, what would you like to say? Yeah.
I think my only point, just to sum up the discussion, would be that women have to be taken as someone who can be running a completely self-owned business. And I think this is a point which Swati was also mentioning, that how do we take them as a serious customer? And how do we take them as someone who can run a fully independent business? Unless we take that, we will not be able to take a view on credit. We will not be able to take a view to say that is there a sustainable business model needed? Who are the investors who want to come in and put the big bets on them? And then, of course, government as the key stakeholder to say that how do we protect them in certain environments. So I think recognizing as an ecosystem to say that nano micro enterprises can be run by women alone independently, I think is going to be a big win if we start doing that. And I think
We
that's
need to also do the gender sensitization of investors, because I have friends who are MTech and who are extremely robust proposals they have for startup, and nobody is ready to support it. No, so that's the problem. That creditworthiness.
Fully agree with you. Fully agree with you.
So gender sensitization and the biases which they have about creditworthiness of women, I think that needs to be worked upon.
And I think the thing which also, sorry, just to add to your point, is the moment this discussion happens, the investor ecosystem, comes back to the same thing to say that, oh, you're talking about microfinancing. I think they just bucket everything as one big thing, and you get colored with something. I think they forget that what are the real things that they can achieve if they invest in this sector.
Yeah, and that's what happens even with those who are established women economists. When you go as an economist, you are treated very well. But the moment you bring gender economics, then immediately your rating goes down. So that is also the strong bias that you see even among the economists.
I just wanted to add on that in terms of again, when we speak about gender disaggregate data, not just about the customer segment, but also in terms of investing in women-led companies. And that's what we're trying to do from an impact investment, that to show what the rate of return for all women-led organizations is. Correct. Because diversity is so important in all aspects and a different kind of organizations.
Yeah, but generally it remains platitude. So now I think we have to crack that. Yes. Yeah. So now can I conclude? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So in conclusion, I think today's discussion was extremely educative, even for me, though I have been interacting with the economists and I have taught economists, but the presentation about the current context and especially the new platform-based e-commerce and all, that also can be very much integrated into the nano and micro finance movement of the women. That was a really new learning for me. So what we see that the increasing access to finance and markets by partnering with financial institutions is extremely important. Our speakers also brought out that we need to reduce gender-based barriers in the business environment by creating more congenial environment and ecosystem, creating business opportunities for institutions and in private sector to improve working conditions of women in the women employees as well as the women entrepreneurs, and dealing with the market segmentation, because markets are not neutral. Okay, markets are also segmented, markets are socially constructed, there are strong biases of caste, class, race, religion, location and gender. So I think we need to deal with that with affirmative action and the measures of equity and inclusion of women in the community relationship. I think the model, the last presentation discussion, Madam Aprameya, when she said that instead communication with the women customers or women who are members of who are grantee of the loans, I think is very important. It also humanizes the relationship, no? So supporting business skills and financial capability through training for women, it's need of an hour. I think it should be inbuilt, because we are doing only gender sensitization in terms of the ideological investment, but this kind of a skill oriented and financial management is extremely important segment. Even I have experienced when I taught economics in the Women's University. In all other topics, everybody showed interest, but when it came to financial management, there was either a phobia or there was a fear. So building business case for equal economic opportunities for men and women. For that, we will have to change the mindset of our elected representatives, our businesses, our investors, and our banking, both in the private and the nationalized banks. Their mindset has to be changed. So the key challenges that we are facing is currently in terms of financial inclusion, as all three of you emphasize need for a gender disaggregated data analysis, interpreting this data, and coming up with a very systematic planned intervention. That's very important. And the role which the fintechs or global fintechs or gender entrepreneurship markets are playing, or women in business and law groups are playing, I think that the collective wisdom that has emerged from their experience needs to be taken to all segments, and I think it has to be percolated to the women who are entering into, and women who are managing the businesses, micro and nano businesses. Supporting women entrepreneurs remains a vital issue, and I think we have to continuously have a capacity building workshops of all stake groups, and to ensure that our country has access to comprehensive technical assistance, capacity building support, and knowledge for meeting the national financial inclusion commitments and the targets which we have promised in the financial inclusion support framework, which was also discussed by all three of you. And how the more and more proactive approach can be taken. And also, I think once again, I would like to emphasize the need for a microfinance act, the regulation, accountability system, and we also need to take cognizance of that incidences of women who have been traumatized, women who have attempted suicide in certain parts because of the mercenary approach of the private mainstream microfinance institutions. So I think we have a long way to go, but today's discussion was very, very important. It has also energized the participants to take this issue of financial management very seriously. Once again, I thank all three of you, Mr. S Bhat, Ms. Swati Chowdhary, and Ms. Shweta Aprameya. And now I request Dr. Simi Mehta and IMPRI team to take over.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And yes, certainly I echo with all your concluding thoughts. And definitely this has energized all of us to look into this very important aspect of not just ideological investment into, women's rights and also access to finance for women, but also bringing things on the ground and actual financial and economic empowerment and independence. So thank you so much. I would like to propose the formal vote of thanks on behalf of the IMPRI Gender Impact Studies Center to our speaker, Mr. S Bhat. Thank you, sir, for agreeing to talk on this very important subject on access to finance for women, and also to our discussants, Swati Chowdhary ma'am and also Shweta Aprameya ma'am. You have really provided your ground level insights, and we hope that this discussion will continue, and we continue to engage with you because the subject is so significant. And I would like to thank our chair for the session, Professor Vibhuti Patel. Thank you, ma'am, for adding your information, your knowledge to for the benefit for all of us. This really is very important. I would like to thank all the attendees here on Zoom, and also those who have participated on Facebook Live, and to all those who would be watching us later on our YouTube channel and listening to the podcast on different platforms. So thank you, and please stay tuned for more such important deliberations that we continue to hold. Thank you, and wish you a very, very good evening. Thank you.
We'll announce our budget discussion on 3rd, no? Yeah, we are going to have gender responsive budget.
Yes, yes. So we'll be having a gender responsive budgeting webinar on the 3rd, for which we will keep you posted. We'll send you emails regarding it. We hope that the upcoming webinar, you will also find that upcoming webinar quite interesting and useful, based on the budget that will be presented by then. So it will be quite interesting. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Very much.
Really
Thank
nice
Thank you for
to
the
meet all three of
opportunity.
you. Yeah. I have been to Seva several times during 80s and 90s, and even I came for that women's leadership in microfinance, international seminar organized by Microfinance Institution in Delhi, in Ahmedabad. So yeah, and nice to know you. Very good. Yeah.
Thank you very much.